little bit by telling you guys about your own experiences. Wow. But there's a lot of research that has been done on graduate students and what this moment represents in your professionalizing journey, in your moment in time, right? It's understood typically as a transitional moment, and I'm sure you can to some extent relate to that, right? From, dependence as a professional on your teachers, on your supervisors, on, all of these, figures that anchor you, to independence and to producing either as a professional or as a researcher. And it often represents this transition from student to academic or to professional in whichever field, right? It involves multiple responsibilities. It can involve coursework, TAing, independent research, work that you're doing in practice outside of it. It is a lot. It is a lot of different tasks, of different points of focus. And it is an important moment of training, right? Of the development of critical skills. And some of these critical skills involve managing your own well-being, right? Keeping yourself in a state where you can sustain working on what you're doing. And that's very important for the rest of your career, right? So it helps to get started nicely here. Okay, this is not. Okay. And then what are we talking about when we talk about well-being? So well-being is, my field of research, and it is a fascinating one because it is a mess. So it is a very fragmented and contested concept. What constitutes well-being? And there are different areas of kind of ways that we explore well-being, right? We can explore it as a positive construct, such as growth, meaning, engagement, happiness, satisfaction with life, relatedness. It is all of these things, but it's also understood as the absence of negative conditions. And a lot of research in graduate students focuses on this as well, because there are negative conditions are alarming and they need to be detected and managed, right? Such as burnout, stress, negative emotions, depressive symptoms, anxiety, right? So these are two kind of global different approaches to well-being, and there's no singular understanding of it, which makes it difficult to understand what's really going on with graduate students because we have all of these different things and they're not always comparable, right? It also makes it, though, so that we have a lot of freedom in kind of composing what well-being means, which I find incredibly interesting. Okay. And from this idea of what is well-being, well, it's a lot of things, right? So there's no right what is well-being for me. We're going to go a little bit more into yourself and the environment. What conditions well-being, right? So a lot of models, especially one of the ones that I work with, if you're from an organizational psychology background, you might be familiar with it, is the DISC-R model: demands, induced, strain, compensation, recovery, big mouthful. And it is a model that outlines that well-being or ill-being results from meeting demands. So things that take your energy, either in your studies, in your work, in your personal life, tasks, projects, etc., using resources. So using either internal elements, your own knowledge, your own energy, your own motivation, or external ones, support from people around you, external knowledge resources. You go to the library, you find resources, etc. So these facilitate completing tasks, and it's sort of a matching game. And these things occur on different levels. So you have personal ones, which is something that we're going to pay attention to in the coaching, especially. A demand on the personal level could be having limited attention, right? Imagine you're working on your final, research project. You have a quantum if you're over your attention span, you're going to have a demand there, right? And a good resource there could be self-confidence, for example. And if you match them to each other, you're able to complete your work in a way that you're well. Right. We also have, aspects such as in your job or in your studies, time pressure, and you can meet that with, say, social support from classmates or friends around you. Then you have organizational stuff, bureaucracy. You need to file something, registration for blah, blah, blah on time, and you cannot graduate if you don't register on time. Ouch. But you have a resource, which is procedural clarity. So you know what steps to take, and there is a good outline of it. And then these, okay, I've got the thingy here. Okay, so with that, the DISCAR model also looks at something that's a little bit more interesting than those levels, right? Which is the types of predictors. So predictors have different types. You have cognitive types of predictors, right? For mental work, and that can be, for example, your knowledge background, all of the things that you've learned before. That can be a cognitive resource, right? For example, for research, if you have to complete something that's complex and you know where to find the information, well, there you have a good match, right? You also have emotional resources and demands, right? Which is, for example, you might have to manage your own frustration in research, and that's rough, right? But you can manage it with support from others, for example. And there's also physical ones. You get fatigued from sitting down for a long time, from having to, stay in a posture that might not be the most natural or comfortable to you. And you can meet that with physical resources. Say you get a really comfortable chair. Maybe not the most interesting for this field of research, but it's there. And all of these aspects also involve a nice outcome called recovery. So how are you recovering from the strain of demands using those resources, right? And it involves detaching from the difficult cognitive aspects, the difficult emotional aspects, the difficult physical. You're typically well if you're able to just cast it off, cast all of these, strains that take energy, that take effort, and come back to your normal, right? Okay, then we've got. Okay, wait, I overshot that. Oops. 1 second, guys. This is very slow. I am very sorry about that. Okay, yeah, one other aspect that is important in this field is strategies for resilience, and it's something that we'll be touching upon in the coaching. There's things beyond resources and demands, right, that are important here, and it's your own internal strategies for how you cope with things, right? And these are, processes or little pathways and plans that you make to minimize stress, to implement and conserve resources, and to manage demands, right? So one coping strategy could be, proactively coping, getting ahead of things, that could be a problem before they become problems. And they have different types. There's, problem-oriented coping, which is typically used for solvable problems, right? So here we would have, I don't know, planning and scheduling, for example, your tasks, is a very good, strategy for that is problem-oriented. Then you have emotional and social support, which you tend to rely on more when problems are not easily solvable as an individual. Again, it's tapping into, your village and the people around you that can support you. And then finally, we have avoidant, which is where you do not have control over the problem, and it's overwhelming and it's difficult. And this could be things like well, as its name indicates, avoiding things that you might have to face. Procrastination is a very common avoiding strategy, right? And we all engage with it sometimes. We're all overwhelmed sometimes and tap into that, right? And it's good to know when it comes to these strategies, what are the triggers? When do we get overwhelmed? How do we get overwhelmed? With which kinds of problems? that gives us a level of strength and control. Okay. And with all of those kind of little ingredients, right, that I've mentioned before, we've developed a coaching trajectory. It has 2 individual sessions and 4 group sessions. And the group, it's a group coaching. So you support each other, you coach each other, you help each other through these things. It's focused on a self-directed improvement of well-being. So all of those aspects with the clouds that we mentioned, they're all aspects that you can target, either minimize the negatives, enhance the positives. We have elements from integrative health coaching, mainly the process, which I'll explain right now. And from PERMA coaching, which is a positive psychology approach to well-being, and it will kind of flesh out the content a little bit. We'll be looking at strengths. We'll be looking at a bunch of other helpful elements that are positive. Then the coaching itself starts with developing a vision of optimal well-being. So this is what is the end goal that we want to get to? What is important for us to approach, right? And this can be anything. You don't have to limit it to the constructs that I mentioned in the clouds, right? It can be just a feeling. It can be a kind of an image. It can be kind of an idea of what a very great outcome that is achievable is for you in your graduate studies. Yeah. And then, you will also explore your current state, how you're feeling now, and what you need to get from your current state to that really good, really nice, but achievable outcome. And yeah, you will be leveraging on resources and strengths and managing demands to craft your PhD or your graduate studies. So understanding what are the positive elements that we can bring into this process and tap into actively, and what are, the difficult things, the stressful things, the exhausting things that we need to kind of manage, contain, and address. And then we will also look into how we cope with these resources, demands, etc. Are we procrastinating too much? Are we, approaching things head on proactively? And then also finally at recovery. And recovery is nice because it kind of ties into all of these things that we do to recover energy, right? It could be, sports, it could be board games, it could be all kinds of lovely things that you guys engage in, and kind of making room for them and finding ways to kind of enhance that. Okay, so with all that spiel, I'm going to bring you guys into a small little exercise that we're going to do, and it's on your well-being vision. So I want you guys to start to think and visualize and kind of process, what does really good well-being mean for you? What would a good outcome of being well in your studies look like? And it can look like anything. There are no boundaries here of what you can and can't kind of have as your end goal. It should be ambitious, but it should also be achievable, hopefully. If we develop a vision that's too utopian, that's too grand, and we miss it by a lot, that sucks. Final coaching, you'll get this QR code in the presentation, but if you would like to register, I would greatly appreciate that, and I think it's going to be a nice process, and you will all... If you don't get knowledge benefits out of it, you will get a relatedness benefit in connecting to each other. So I hope you go for it. If not, that's also fine. And yeah, the first individual session where we kind of set the tone for the rest of the coaching and do a bit of a planning is on the week of August 19th. I I hope you can make it, and you will hear from me about this again, and probably see my posters on campus.